and around the world, maybe a little bit here. This is Dawn Cook, a member of our Historical Society who takes a big interest in cemeteries and studies them around the world, has visited a lot of cemeteries. So he's going to give you some information on our cemeteries. Dawn.
Yeah, my name's Don Cook, lived in Grove City my whole life, retired from General Electric Company in 2009, kind of got bored with sitting around the house, started down here working with genealogy with James, getting the company started, and I know a lot of the faces through here. And I just started with cemeteries, and I just got an interest in them because they're so unique. Does anybody got, just a question, anybody got any ideas how many cemeteries alone are just in Mercer County? 182 known cemeteries in Mercer County alone, just in this county. So you can imagine how many there are worldwide. But there's one cemetery that I'll start to mention before I get to the slideshow. I have no pictures of because it's so damaged and it's in the woods, it's on private property. It's Perry's Corners Cemetery. Does anybody? Perry's Corners is right out 1173 at the intersection of Doherty Road on the north side, just before you get to the interstate. There's a cemetery on private property back there in the woods. It was a farm that John Sutherland had that John Perry bought 200 acres. And that's how cemeteries actually started. People had farms, they buried their own on the cemetery. There were little plots, a cemetery plot. So really wasn't any cemeteries until around 1850 when large cemeteries that you see now started appearing. Before 1850, most of the time was just small cemeteries where people had their little 10 or 12 burials, just family alone. And there's some unique people around Grove City that's buried in some of the cemeteries in Grove City that I'm going to cover that you probably don't even know or even thought of that people would live in a small town like this. Now I start with Old Presbyterian Cemetery on Greenwood Drive. I know if you go right down along Wolf Creek, this cemetery is, there's 432 interments in the Old Presbyterian Cemetery. Valentine Cunningham moved here in 1798, and he built a log cabin down along Wolf Creek. And in 1799, he built the grist mill that's down on the corner. You'll see a grist mill, the signs down there where the little park is at. Now, him and his wife and 2 sons were here. And let me get to this, where am I at? There we go. Gotta figure out how to run this projector. Okay. Alright, Tom, it's not advancing. There we go. Well, back one. It's advancing twice. He is considered to be the founder of Pine Grove, which turned into Grove City Borough later on, after his 2 sons come back in 1834. He died at the age of 30. He was rather young. He died in like 1806. His wife died, she was 25. She even died before he did. But in 1834, their 2 sons returned to lay out the plan for what would be Pine Grove here in Grove City. And then in 1883, Pine Grove actually became the borough of Grove City. Now, this keeps disappearing. There we go. Look, daggone it, this thing is touchy. This is his stone, his son's stone. Was considered, they called him the squire of Grove City. He laid out the plans for the, come on, you put it on there and it just advanced by itself. Don't throw anything soft or hard at me. Please throw soft stuff. This is Charles, the other brother. But both their cemeteries are down there. Now this cemetery with the Cunningham started, if you go down, it really, they were buried there before it was the Old Presbyterian Cemetery. They were buried on the plot of land that he owned, and you can actually see this, the layout of just where the Cunningham plot was at, where Valentine, his wife, was at. And then from there on, then it turned into to be the Presbyterian Cemetery. Now when Cunningham moved back here in 1834, come on. This is his house, which is now considered Cunningham Hall. It's on the lower end of the college campus. This was the man that actually laid out everything that took out in Pine Grove, where the whole town was how it was laid out. There we go, if I just touch that. Okay, and that was Charles, his brother, who helped him. Now, Sidney Powell is also buried down here. there's some unique stones down there. Sidney Powell was a private, and he served under Captain John Schaefer, company of the PA Militia during the War of 1812. And we don't have a lot, there's a few of 1812 veterans around, but I haven't found a lot as compared to what I have for the Civil War. There's a lot. 1812's slow as far as number of interments in Mercer County, or in Grove City area. Now the Grace Methodist Cemetery, this is one that's confused as being part of Woodland. I still get phone calls and emails looking for people they think is buried in Woodland that's buried in the Grace United Methodist Church Cemetery across the street. Now this, like it says on there, this is the former site of the Wolf Creek Methodist Episcopal Church from 1834 to 80. Now the church, they have 409 interments, people are buried there. And the church burnt down and they lost all the records of the cemetery. Now I used the books out here, the cemetery inscription books, if you've used these, if anybody's used these out there to locate ones. These are not really complete lists. They are lists of off the gravestones only that was taken by ladies back in 1980. And I got those, and through research online, I've made a book that the Church Methodist Church Cemetery has now of listing of all the ones that I know of, and I think Jane has. I give Jane one here for the Historical Society. This thing just wants to go by itself. Okay. I can touch it, you guys. Anyways, some of the people that's buried over there. This here is Valentine Gibner. He was a charter member of the Wolf Creek Republicans Club. Believe it or not. And he took a strong stance against slavery. This man was really, he was anti-slavery and just staunch supporter of Republicans. It's hard to find a lot of information on some of the people that's here, that's buried in these cemeteries, but he is one. The next one, come on, advance. Okay.
What's the date on these?
The date, I don't have the, I'd have to look the date up there on him. I can't. September 1868, I don't have all the dates written down. I have all the dates are listed on the files out in the front. But, okay. Advance. Advance. Hey, Jane. If it wants to advance on its own, then it won't advance when you want it to.
Are you doing left or right clicking?
Yeah, try them both. Don't do either one of them.
Let's see. Okay. That's 2 clicks. All right. That's 1 click.
Let me try this. Let me see if I do from down here. Go from there. Where'd it go? Where'd the whole thing go?
I'm sorry, I touched this. Is that what
What'd you
this-
touch?
This thing, I'm sorry.
Okay, so how do I get back to it?
All right. We were here when we... All right.
There we go.
Okay, this mouse might be better. Hold off a second, don't touch that.
Give me the
Since
mouse.
that's, yeah, I'm gonna just check.
Okay,
Why don't you try
there we
this? And let's move this
Just set
up.
it right. Yeah.
go. Okay, let me try this. Now this is also, this guy was George Taylor. He had a large farm that bordered, he was actually in Pine Township, right on the border of Pine and Liberty Township. And he was actually the first one who patented the sawmill that was built right on Wolf Creek, where a lot of the lumber was produced that built the homes you see that are still here today, the older homes around Grove City, and buildings like this. It's been here for a while. Now, James Opry's family is also buried up there, and he was of a French and Welsh descent. They came from the colonies in 1776 and Pine Grove in 1812. They had a general store here in downtown Grove City on Broad Street. They owned a livery, and they also owned a lime quarry that furnished most all the foundation stone that built the houses or the buildings on Grove City College campus as it stands today. This man's family did the actual mining. Now this one, I don't know if anybody even recognizes or knows where this one's at. It used to be the Odd Fellows. Anybody remember the Odd Fellows? It's Orchard Manor. In behind Orchard Manor this is a stone that's in the center of the field of the cemetery. And they're all small, flat markers. But the Oddfellows, the Independent Order of the Oddfellows, was founded in England in 1700s. And it was a non-political, non-sectarian fraternal order that was started in Baltimore, Maryland. It was actually the first organization that allowed men and women to become members. Back in that time, usually everything was all strictly male, and they actually allowed women to be members. And the home that was actually up there used to have like a 3, like the 5 Olympic rings, but that had a 3 on the top. And a lot of the locals used to call it the pretzel factory because it kind of looked like a pretzel. And behind that, it ended up being a nursing home and like a retirement home for members that were of the order of that. And they're all flats markers like this on the ground, and that's all they have on them. Their name, birth, death date, and the lodge where they came from. Now they quit burying in about I don't know how we got one turned again, Jane, in there, but they quit burying about 1980, I think it was 85 was the last burial there. But then there is one burial up there for some reason. It has a different stone. It was buried in 2010. I think it was cremations of a woman that had been in there at one time, and they come back and buried her. She must have wanted buried there, and that's where she ended up being buried. Sorry about that. Now, this is a cemetery that I'm probably most familiar with because I've been caretaking and doing book work for this cemetery on and off since 1980. I had got out 2 or 3 times, and it's kind of like family. After you're there, you just keep getting sucked back in. And this is kind of one of my child, like my child here. This statue here is, if you drive through, it's one of the only few statues of any in all the cemeteries in the Grove City area. There's not very many statues around. Now, interesting, this guy that built this, his family, they all just have flat markers around them with their names on. This statue is Graham, and his name was Alexander E. Graham. He born in 1839, and he died in 1909. He also fought in the Civil War. But he came from Sharon, Hermitage area, where he worked in industry, and he went to serve in the Civil War. He came back. He went to the University of Pittsburgh, got his degree. He started in the banking community, he was bookkeeper, and worked his way up through some of the banking communities over in Sharon area. And he moved to Grove City, and he was the founder of the Grove City Banking Company in 1884, which later he joined in 1896. He partnered up with a man named W.C. Alexander, and the Grove City Banking Company became the bank that we know today as the First National Bank. And then he stayed on as president of the First National Bank until 1903 when he became ill. And after that, he died in 1909. But he was also a strong supporter of Republican policies, and he said his first presidential vote was for Abraham Lincoln.
Why is it a woman? Why does he have a woman?
I don't know. Want me to ask him?
He should have himself.
I don't know. Yeah, he should. But if you look at it, it's on a marble base, which will last forever. But the actual, it's a softer stone, and that's what happens with most of the older stones were made out of a sandstone. So if you go back to a lot of the older cemeteries, you can't read the inscriptions in the name, and it's hard to read. It's because of the weather; it just deteriorates them bad. Where the granite withstands the weather. And it's just a unique one. This one here, I don't know the people, but I just thought, boy, you know, their kids must have really loved them. They sure didn't want them coming back from the grave when they placed that big cement thing on top of them. It's kind of shaped like a bed. Roberts is the name. I don't know the people. But it's just a unique stone. I don't see too many of them by. Now we do have 2 mausoleums. It's at Woodland Cemetery, which you don't see a lot of mausoleums because they were around here. They were probably expensive and they're so large. But now this mausoleum has Regal. Now William Regal was he was the pastor of the Harbison Chapel at Grove City College. Actually, they called it
he was the pastor of Harbison Professor, was what his actual title was. And he married a Mary Fithian, which Fithian is a Grove City name, and they're entombed in this mausoleum, which surprisingly not, you go right next door, is E.J. Fithian. Now E.J. Fithian was Marion Fithian's father, who was married to Regal. Now, E.J. Fithian Mausoleum, he was a co-founder of the Crothers Fithian Clutch Company. He moved to Grove City in 1900s in there. He was a physician before he started working and becoming an industrialist. And he was actually ended up being the mayor of Grove City at one time. And he was very active in the Prohibition Party back in the day. He was actually on quite a few tickets for the governor of Pennsylvania. Was one, senators. He was on a lot of tickets on the Prohibition Party ticket. Okay, most famous guy we got, right there, Norman Maxwell. Colonel Norman Maxwell was the leader and head of the PA 100, which they called the Roundheads during the Civil War. He led the troops through, boy, I'll tell you what, the volunteer group that he had, he led them through a lot of battles. Including some of the ones like the Battle of Bull Run, the Battle of Antietam, Battle of Fredericksburg, Siege of Vicksburg. One of their last battles is they retook, 100s retook Fort Stedman. And after the war, he went on, here we go, to move to Erie. There's his flat stone, where he ran the Erie Soldiers and Sailors Home, but he was actually ended up becoming back his final years into the mercantile in Grove City. He worked in the mercantile business here in Grove City before he passed away. He was actually born in Plain Grove, Lawrence County. And after he died, they made him brigadier general. They promoted him out to be a brigadier general after he retired. And I do have, there he is. Plain Grove. Yep, that's where he was born and raised, was Plain Grove. But he resided in Grove City after he got out of the military. Now this guy, nothing fancy, not really important, but Isaac Kilkirk. This guy had to be one tough son of a gun, and I just love this guy. I'd like to talk. This is the one man I'd really like to talk to. He's the only man I know. He served in Company B in the 100th Regiment. He was captured in Plymouth, North Carolina. He spent 8 months in Andersonville prison camp. Now, for those of you that are not real familiar with the Civil War in Andersonville prison camp, probably one of the worst places you could ever go. So many Union soldiers died in Andersonville because the Confederate soldiers didn't even have enough food to feed their own soldiers. So you imagine how much food and the care their prisoners got taken care of. Most of them, a lot of them starved of malnutrition in Andersonville prison camp. Now this guy, after he served in there, he come back and he went on, and actually at 60 years old, he went back in and served in the Spanish-American War. At 60. Now I don't know, imagine, I'm 64, I couldn't imagine going to war at 60 again. Because the Spanish-American War was the USS Maine, how it all started, the United States got dragged into that war, was USS Maine was stationed in Havana Harbor, and there was an explosion on board that was prompted by the Spanish military. And that's how the United States got sucked into free Cuba out of Spanish control. Because Spain controlled Cuba, and when the Maine got blew up, that's what drew the United States into the war with Spain. But this guy, I'd love to talk to him. Imagine what he's went through. And besides how tough the war he went, he had 9 children. I feel bad for his wife if he was away at war all the time, raising 9 children. She must have been tough too. That's him right there. This next guy is probably the unheard of man that's buried at Woodland. Benjamin Franklin Hauser Jones. Short life. He's 30 years old. But he came from Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, is where he lived. He came to Grove City College. and he played football for Grove City College. And after he got done playing football for Grove City College, he went on to become one of the early NFL stars. He was a running back, played running back, fullback, halfback. In 1923, he played for the Canton Bulldogs. And the Canton Bulldogs went on and won the championship that year. And in 1924, it went on to become the Cleveland Bulldogs, and they won the championship that year. And then he was 1926, he played for what was now then called the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, which turned into be the Philadelphia team that we know. So Cleveland went on to be the Browns, but he played he was on 3 NFL championships, and he was an all NFL player in 1924, or 1923, excuse me, with the team that he won the first one with. Now, he died really in 1929. He actually went over to the Cleveland Clinic to have a tonsil operation, which that's what the paper said, but I'm going to take it he had a tonsillectomy he was going over for. He was on the 4th floor, and that's when the X-ray lab had a fire and exploded. And 123 people died. Ben was hanging out, climbed out, was hanging on the 4th floor ledge, according to the newspaper article out of the Ford Times. And he said he was okay, get everybody else. He was out of the fumes, because the X-ray lab had all sorts of fumes coming through that. And a lot of people died, not only just from the fire, but most of the people died from gas inhalation. He actually got down, drove the whole way home, and died the next day here in Grove City. Which, when his funeral was here in Grove City, actually, Jim Thorpe attended his funeral here in Grove City. And Jim Thorpe was one of the most famous football players of all time to ever play the game. Actually came, he must have thought that much of him, he came here to his funeral. So he's the guy, I'd really love to talk to that guy too. That's his picture right there from the Grove City yearbook. And we actually have the yearbook out there, and he signed it, the yearbook we got, and he signed his name for whoever in his football gear. And on Halloween, keep your eye out for the ghosts. We're actually have 7 ghosts. The first 2 I was on this side actually are young boys, 7 to 1911 and 8 to 1911. And the best I could get, the story has it that they both burnt in a house fire. That was part of a article I guess I wrote for the Sharon paper that Jane got me invested in to write for, and they wanted some stories about cemeteries. So this one is one. This is another one. This is one of the small old ones. This is Doherty Cemetery. Now across from Perry's Corners, where Perry's farm was the Doherty farm. Matter of fact, the farm, the house, and everything right now, the property, Rand Hines owns and lives in. He sold off a lot of property they built other houses on. This was a personal family stones, family markers. Most of them are not legible. But William Doherty had actually served in the Civil War, Revolutionary War, excuse me. He was a Revolutionary War soldier. And he bought this property and moved there. And he, born in 1755, died in 1834. But it's on private property at the end of Gill Road, very end of Gill Road off of Harrisville Road. If you drive the whole way down to the very end, you end up in right at a person's dead-end house in the cemetery in their front yard. The house, 20 yards in front of their front door is where this cemetery's hill on front. It's a little hill they're buried on. And there's 13 people interned there, is all that's there.
He let you in there okay without any trouble?
Galt owns them, and my son graduated with one of the boys, so I actually got out. And I was going to take pictures of all the stones, but you can't read them. It's just they're illegible. Oh, and by the way, Woodland is probably the largest cemetery we have here of the older cemeteries. There's approximately 4,530 people interned at Woodland. Here we go. Now, how do I rotate this?
Oh.
I there's gotta be some way I can rotate this, because these were all in here before in the right direction, and then we went back, and here we go. Edit, rotate,
Yeah, there we go.
maybe. It won't let me rotate it.
You're not, you're not.
There you go.
Okay, let's go back
One
to
more
this.
time, there you
Now, this is a small, also another small farm cemetery that's out off of the Cranberry Road. It's called the Rose Cemetery. Now, what's unique about the Rose Cemetery, it's right almost on the corner of, up on a hill before you get to the George Junior Road. It's a small cemetery, but the unique about it is the people that's buried there. Let me go one more slide. Now, here we go again. This is a closer, this is, come on, rotate. 2, 3. Okay, now James Rose married Martha McKinley. Now Martha McKinley's brother was James Stevenson McKinley, who married James Rose's sister, Polly. So Polly and James McKinley, brother-sister, married brother-sister. Now the interesting story is about that is James's sister, Polly, and Martha's brother, William, are grandparents of President McKinley. So that makes James and Martha great aunt and uncle of William McKinley, our 15th president of the United States. Also buried there, but in an unmarked grave, is Polly and Martha's mother, and James McKinley's mother, President William McKinley's great-grandmother, Sarah Gray McKinley, is also buried out there, but she's in an unmarked grave. So you just think you'd have presidential family living in the Grove City area.
That stone really held up good too, didn't it?
Well, that was, I believe that was put in after the fact that the old ones were gone, and then the family went back and put another one back in, because when I first went to visit this cemetery years ago, that stone wasn't there. The old sandstone markers were there, and you could still read them when I was visited there some, but these ones I think are placed out there later, because some of the other ones there's a few other stones out there you can't read, but there's 16 people buried on that Rose farm, and it's also on private property between 2 houses. So you can visit these, but you just kind of be polite if you want to visit cemeteries. Try to get a hold of them in advance and ask if they mind.
Don't just say Dawn told me.
No, I just don't tell you Dawn until I come. But one thing, President William McKinley, believe it or not, in his second term, he was actually born in Niles, Ohio, but in his second term, he was assassinated in Buffalo, New York. So, and that's when Roosevelt took off, because Roosevelt was his vice president in his second term.
They have a neat museum up there too.
He was, that's what I said.
Roosevelt's inauguration.
He was, huh? He was the 25th president. I think I said the 15th before. He was the 25th, excuse me.
There's a neat museum up there for Roosevelt's inauguration, the house where he was inaugurated.
Is there? Yeah. But this is the one, I dreaded one, I really hate to even talk about. This cemetery started, I hate to say this, my grandparents and my parents are both buried out there. But I don't know of any, it was the last cemetery, it's probably the only one of the cemeteries that's still in the Grove City area that you can buy cemetery lots in. Everything else is filled up, sold out around Grove City. All the cemeteries I went to before, even Woodland sold. We do have burials that come in every once in a while, but the people have bought the lots. And this is Crestview, and they have a mausoleum. This is their little chapel. You can be buried inside and outside, which most of you probably, if you're around Grove City, you probably know people that's buried in Crestview. I just don't believe it's taken care of the way it should be. Outside burials, inside. Now this is something that's just come on. These are cremations that they're starting to put in stones, and they dig the hole in the ground rather than being buried underground or in the stone. Which I guess is convenient if you get up and move and you want to take your remains of your loved ones with you. You can
You're a
move
little
the
heavy
stone.
at the back of the station.
But the only people I know out here, and these are the people I love, and they're not famous, but they're heroes. And there's a lot out there that was killed in action during World War II. And I just gathered a few of them where it died in different places. Battle of the Bulge. Here we go with this rotate again. 1, 2, 3. Well, that's because I didn't come back and open this up. That way I'll cover that back up again on it. But Iwo Jima, lost at sea. Come on. Rotate. Belgium, and buried in Belgium. So this is, a lot of them, people put their markers out there even though they're buried elsewhere. So they still have a place that they can actually go and say they have a place to visit even though their loved ones' remains aren't there. Killed in Italy. Here we go. Rotate. There we go. In France. And it's just, I don't know any famous person buried there, with the exception of these people. Don't have to be famous, but to me, they gave everything so we could be here tonight and do what we do. Now this is, I don't have a lot on this cemetery, except this is probably the most unique cemetery that you'll ever go in. It's on Gill Road. It's quite a cemetery. Most of all these older cemeteries, the old Presbyterian cemetery, the Methodist cemetery, the Catholic cemetery, were in pretty bad shape for a long time. Because when the cemeteries ran out of money, because when you're not burying people and keep bringing money in, eventually you run out of money to take care and maintain. And in Pennsylvania around here, a lot of the cemeteries, actually the churches started taking care of. Grace Church takes care of the Grace Cemetery, the Tower takes care of Presby, the Catholic Church takes care of the upkeep of this one. Because this cemetery, even back in about 2010, was in pretty bad shape because they had a lot of mine subsidence and lots of damage. But what's really unique about this cemetery is this cemetery has pictures on a lot of the stones, porcelain pictures here. And this is just happened to be Sam Ponderay's grave, and he is the Ponderays from Grove City up through Sam that actually owned the beer distributor. I'm not sure what the generation is. Rocco Cemetery that had the real estate in Grove City he has a son, Rocco, so I'm not sure if this is his grandfather or great-grandfather, but I know that's the lineage. I didn't have a lot of time to research, because this is a cemetery I haven't done a ton of research on. Now this cemetery started by the gift of land I know from the Zagardi family. Gifted this land, and that's where the Catholic cemetery started. But it's unique with all these, to actually be able to go out and see the picture of who is buried there is kind of unique. And this cemetery actually is really interesting to walk through now. This is the Zagardi mausoleum that was built out there. And they're buried on the sides. You can see the plaques, but a lot of the plaques that started were actually the sandstones, and it's hard to read. You can see the deterioration even here on the mausoleum. Built in 1923 by Joseph, and it was actually a family built back then. You didn't have a company build it for you; you built it yourself. So, but it's a unique cemetery. It's one that's worth looking in Gill Road. Oh, I want to back up one. That's really all I had on Grove City cemeteries, and I thought if I had time, I want to cover a couple. This kind of unique, because when Kathy called me, she asked me about doing a thing on cemeteries, and I wasn't really all that much on Grove City cemeteries, with the exception of Woodland, except for going through and filming and taking pictures and posting online, because I've taken actually 30,000 photos, cemetery stones, and I've posted 16,000 burials in Grove City. 7 cemeteries I've completed. It's posted online with photos of the gravestones. And it's under a site called Find a Grave. If you're looking to find anybody in the Grove City, mostly Mercer County, there's a lot that's in there now that you can find. I actually started this with some of the most unique cemeteries I've found. And this one is the most unique it's a really unique cemetery. It's Calvary Cemetery. It was started, it was a Catholic cemetery, and of course it's named after Mount Calvary where Christ was crucified at. But this cemetery is one that you don't think you'd ever be able to see or know where it's at. It's in Queens, New York. When you're in New York, you'd never thought of seeing a cemetery. But this is one of the oldest, and it actually contains the most interments of any cemetery in the United States. Believe it or not, this cemetery has over 3 million people buried in it. Now, you'd never think there'd be a cemetery big enough to have 3 million people buried in. But so it's built on 365 acres, like I said, in Queens, New York. The first burial was in July 31st, 1848. And you had to take the ferry boat over. They ferry boated the body over because you couldn't get to it because there was no roads to Queens because it was water separated from New York City. And the cost to ferry boat over, be buried, and your grave dug and be buried was $7. Which I imagine back then $7 was still, that was a lot of money back then. But this cemetery has grown 4 times since then. In 1852 it expanded. They had to expand because they were averaging 50 burials a day in 1852 because the plague was going around and they didn't have the antibiotics or would save a lot of people's lives these days. Actually, in that time frame, most people were burying their own loved ones. They'd take them over and have to dig their own grave because they were manually digging graves back then by hand. And there was such a lack of grave diggers at 50 a day, they couldn't get anybody to dig the graves. But it's a massive place. You can see the stones. There's a skyline in New York, it's right there. But when you go to New York City, if you've ever been to New York City, you never think about seeing a cemetery with 3 million burials. It's
Any open spots?
they're still burying there today. They still have some openings, but it's getting to the point where it's filled up, almost filled up too. But they have some unique. There's unique stones and graves, and and carvings into granite that's there. That's the mausoleums up there. They have small rooms like they have around here, but there's one in here that this one's a massive one, but this one here is huge. The second floor up in here even. I would love to get inside and tour the inside of it and look through the inside. It's as big as a house. But that's a skyline view of just how big that cemetery is to New York. And I've been in New York. I've been in New York many different times to plays and never even knew that cemetery existed. And
Thing.
yeah, it's
Spend
just
your time there.
oh yeah, I probably would. I would have probably spent more time there. Yeah, I would have. But it's just, you can see how big it is, though. It's just humongous. And this one we all know. This is, believe it or not, there's 147 national cemeteries in the United States, but this is the most famous. It's not the largest, but it's actually the most famous cemetery. It's also considered the most visited cemetery in the United States, with over 4 million people visiting this cemetery every year. There's 2 presidents buried there, President Taft and President Kennedy. And through there. And 1921 is the year that the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier started, which is, if you've ever been there, it's a fantastic. I mean, most people go there and visit this cemetery just to see the changing of the guard. 365 days a year, they're there 24/7 guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And it's rain, snow, sleet, it doesn't matter. These guys are there. Now this is John F. Kennedy's grave site with the eternal flame. Just a few throughout the cemetery. Now it's a lot larger cemetery than the 365 acres Calvary's on, but due to that's the amphitheater in the back, but due to the many structures and monuments that's on the site, there's about 500,000 buried right now in Arlington. And they average 30 burials a day, Monday through Friday, and 10 burials on Saturday. They expect actually to run out of burial space at Arlington in 20 years. There'll be no more burials at Arlington in 20 years. But their stones are all diagonally, horizontal, and vertical are all in correct order. No matter what angle you look at them, they're in line. But it's just a unique cemetery.
Now, that's the Custis Lee
Yes,
mansion.
correct. And that's actually what owned the property before they took it over. There was the first woman that was, I can't remember her name, there was a woman buried there that was on the site when they got it. But actually the first military burial was a man named William Chrisman, who was buried on May 13th, 1864. Was the first military burial to take place. Actually, I'd like to, now, we'll talk about burials. We'll talk about money. We're running out of burial space. Actually, in the United States, in 2015, there was 2,626,418 deaths in the United States. So you can see they're running out of room. Cremation in the United States from conventional burial has went up. In 2005, 32% was cremation. In 2010, it rose to 40% cremation. 2017, last year actually it was over 50. 2017, they expect 52% this year, and by 2030, they expect 72% of the United States of people who die in this country are cremated. In foreign countries like Hong Kong and Japan, it's virtually 100% cremation. They don't have nowhere to bury people. Absolutely nowhere. There we go again. This actually is one, you can see the little Buddha down here. Now in the Buddhist religion, they have to be able to visit their family members that die. They actually have to go see them. And this is where cremated ashes are stored. Here is two. These are two in downtown Hong Kong. They were apartment buildings that actually converted them into ashes storage. And actually there's in Hong Kong right now there's a 5-year waiting list to be able to find a place to store cremated ashes of your family members. And inside those they have pictures on a lot of them. They're like this. And it's just, they're different. This is off the one that's, they do inside and outside where you can go visit.
Nice view on that one.
Yeah, yeah, you probably have to pay more for the view spots, I guess, I don't know. But it's just the way we're going. They're actually now, these are two templates of ones they're designing the floating cemeteries. Because they don't have the land, they're gonna put their burial cremations to sea on this. And this is one that's designed, you can see the cruise ship there. Actually, this was designed in 11. They may have started construction on it by now. I think it was designed in 2011. They were working on this design. So it's quite, we think about burials as regular burials around here. The rest of the world looks at burials in a different way than we do. Sweden is up to approximately 80% cremation, and now they're doing something different. So I guess we're looking green all over the world. They have, right now, it's called resumation rather than cremation, because cremation, they say, releases too much toxins into the air. So they have resumations, where they actually place your body in a wool coffin, and they send you into a resumation chamber with, it's a water and alkali type base fluid, and it's 3 to 4 hours, which actually dissolves most of your body into a white ash. And then you get your ashes back out from there. It reduces just your body to ash in a 3 to 4 hour period. And it's more green, and they're doing that. And actually people in the foreign countries are actually planting these, they named it resumation because we're actually planting their ashes with rose bushes. So they call it resumation. There's Promessa Organic is a unique place. It's really what we're doing with ashes of people. They not turn them into ashes. They actually freeze your body in liquid nitrogen. And then they vibrate it with ultrasound waves until you actually crumble like an ice cube would smash. And then they send your ashes, what's left, into a chamber to withdraw the moisture. A dehydration chamber to withdraw the moisture, because your body's like 70% water. And then when you're done, you have the ashes left. And there's no toxins released into the air. They're looking green for everything. Now these are foreign countries, and it's actually happened. It's taking place over there. It hasn't moved into this country, but eventually down the road it will, because we're just running out of places for conventional burials. The land is just, it's just not feasible anymore. And actually, there's 3 or 4 places in the United States too. You can send your cremated ashes, which is a big one that's starting now. Your cremated ashes or the hair, and they actually withdraw the carbon from your cremated ashes or out of your hair, and they man create. It takes about 3 to 4 months. They hand create you a diamond. You can have diamond earrings or a diamond ring, and carry your wife, make your wife into a diamond ring, your husband into a diamond ring.
Hope you don't lose it.
Yeah, but that's just the way the cemeteries are going. You're not going to see what we see as cemeteries here today is not going to be that way in the future. It's going to change big time. Okay. So that's all I really have. You asked me for 45 minutes. I got about 46, Kathy. I have pretty close time.
Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions or any comments about, the Rose City cemeteries or cemeteries in general? Who's the guy to ask if anybody has
You
any?
been to Oak Hill?
Yes.
They got quite a little mausoleum there.
Yes,
It's a
nice.
really old.
Oak Hill's nice, very well, and Sandy Lake is very well taken care of cemetery. Very well taken care of cemetery. There's not too many cemeteries in Mercer County I haven't been to. But I've been to cemeteries. The most unique cemetery I've been to is in Okinawa, Japan. And I spent a day touring a cemetery in Okinawa, Japan, which was just absolutely, their monuments are absolutely out of this world. They're just unbelievable. How large and huge, and from anywhere from poverty to where they've actually climbed over the cliffs. The poorer people have climbed over the cliffs of the cemetery and dug into the side with ropes and buried their loved ones, and actually have just a plaque mounted off the side of the cliff so they can look over and see where they're buried at down below.
Which cemetery
That,
which cemetery in Grove City has the most World War I people buried in it? Because Crestview probably wasn't started yet.
no, Crestview wasn't. I would,
The Catholic one has a lot because
yeah, but the Catholic doesn't have
it
that. The
always
Catholic
says just
cemetery.
the World War is what it says on it.
Yeah.
Because they know there was going to be a two.
Yeah, I'm going to say in the Grove City area would I'm going to say Woodland probably has the best chance because it has almost 5,000 interments, where the Catholic Church Cemetery
I
doesn't
just
have that
noticed
many.
when we're there, because we go there
Yeah.
now, our church, we have mass there Memorial Day in the morning. It's beautiful. We have mass in the cemetery. It's really nice. But a lot of them say the World War, the World War.
Yeah,
Because
They didn't know there was gonna be a
they didn't know
second
there
one.
was going to be another one.
yeah. Because the Catholic cemetery only actually has 285 people buried there. That's all that's interred in the Catholic cemetery is 285 people, and there's real close to 5,000 in Woodland. So I'm going to guess Woodland may be the guess. I really haven't counted them. I'm sure they are in the Grove City area for World War II deaths, for sure. But there's some cemeteries in Sharpsville and that are very huge cemeteries that I'm going to guess probably contain like 8,000 to 9,000 people buried there. That probably is the leading contender. Because the more people you have buried there, the better chance you have of what's there during the war. I would say.
I've been doing some family history research, and a lot of my relatives are buried over at Moorfield Cemetery in
That's-
Hermitage.
Yep.
And the old Pennsylvania, or the Mercer County history books just rave about Moorfield being like the most beautiful cemetery in the county.
Yeah.
I was surprised that family members served on the board there at the cemetery and everything.
It is a nice cemetery, and the cemeteries actually are well taken care of. But the biggest reason, and a lot of the cemeteries, you're not going to see cemeteries being created anymore, not only because of land, but like the state of New York, all cemeteries have to be nonprofit. You can't just go out and start a cemetery to make money. Like most cemeteries were actually started to be income. New York did that, and a lot of other states went and did that. And the reason being is the cemeteries, like the Woodland Cemetery, is an association. There's only 2 people on payroll, and that's the caretaker and the assistant caretaker that actually take care of the grounds. Guys like me that do all the book work, and the treasurer and the president, Trip McBride, we all work for free. So we do that, and the Cunninghams and the Fithians and the Kettlers, actually, and everybody, a lot of people put money into that to keep that, because that cemetery at one time was pretty well run down too, because they ran out of money. And they put money in, because we're not burying that many either. I 4 or 5 last year, none, probably in 9 months. We haven't had a burial in 9 months. And there's probably maybe 400 sites left yet to fill, 400 to 500 sites left to fill that are sold, but the people are still alive. But when you don't have that income coming in all the time, and like Crestview, where they skimmed all the money off the top, they've been bankrupt, I think, 3 times. Now, that cemetery was well taken care of when Tom Howard had it, but when he passed away, got sick, he didn't want to put that responsibility to take care of the cemetery on his family. And he sold it, and it got sold. Now it's an organization. This organization owns 400 cemeteries. And they're in it for profit only. Because when they sell you the casket and the vault, and their prices they're up to $2,600 for an opening and closing a grave, which is unbelievable. But they actually, huh?
I saw things in the newspaper, people wanting like $1,400 for a place like Crestview.
And you can't sell them. They can't sell them.
I get mine to my brother.
Yeah, and you can't sell them because nobody wants to buy them. I have people call wondering if they can trade them for a site at Woodland, which we can't do. They don't want to be buried out there because of that. And that right now, they actually, when you buy stuff, they try to sell you the whole package, the marker and everything else, and the coffin and the vault. They actually bury the vault. If you buy a vault off them, they bury the vault empty, because they can't take the money out of escrow unless the vault is in the ground. I'm not a Crestview fan. You won't find any. I know every cemetery guy around. I know every caretaker. I know every undertaker around. The Cunninghams, Black, they all try to direct people away from Crestview because of that. But if you have your lot bought out there already, Mike did just tell me the other day they think they're treating people right. They lowered their cost of opening closings $300 or $350, but it still was $2,695 for an opening and closing, which is absurd. After you've already spent $4,000 on a lot. So, yeah, but it's the only game in town, and they know it, because really, unless you want to go to Prairie, I think Harmony has a few spots left. Union Home has some left.
No, Irwin and.
Mount Irwin has some spots left, which is actually a nice taken care of cemetery too.
There's 1,200 new ones there.
They have a new section.
There's a new section, 1,200
Yeah,
per se.
very, and well, that's nice to know. 'Cause that Mount Union's taken care of. Matter of fact,
They got a good endowment a couple of years ago
Yeah.
from a relative. And
yeah.
it's on Scrubgrass Road. It's by Amity Church.
And it's a fairly large cemetery. Matter of fact, I think last time I visited that cemetery, it was in the back section you were just starting, it was in the very back, that open field you were starting, okay. But, yeah, at night, it's also a nice taken care of cemetery. You don't have to worry about walking in route through weeds, it's mowed and trimmed and taken care of. And that's happening with a lot of them. And there's a lot of cemeteries you still walk into that aren't taken care of that well. The old log cemetery in Barkeyville, last time I was out there, you needed hip boots to get through because the weeds were so high. But it's come down to money. Now I think they're starting to mow it a few times a year, because I think actually the church in Barkeyville actually is starting to pay for the mowings to get it done.
Well, thank you so much, Don. That was so interesting and so informative. As a follow-up to Don's cemetery talk tonight, we are going to have, I think the first one I've ever had at the Grove City Historical Society, a cemetery walking tour. And we're going to see some of these that Dawn showed us on the screen. So if you want to pass that around, we have it scheduled for Monday, July 17th, with the rain date on the 18th. Hopefully, Dawn's a busy guy, but hopefully Dawn will be available to help us with that.
I'll have to see,
walking
because
tour.
I have church council the week before.
Yeah,
I'll be gone for a
but
week.
if not, we're gonna do some research. I can't even tell you what the program will be, except that we're starting at the old Presbyterian Church on Greenwood Drive, because the Cunninghams are buried
Oh, that's
there.
interesting.
Where else we're going, that hasn't been determined yet, so, but at least if you wanna save that date, we do plan to have a walking tour, of some of the Grove City cemeteries.
We'll have go to one fair and look around.
Really?
Learn a little bit of history, so it's neat to hear about it again.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's the program for tonight. Please help yourself to punch and cookies here.
Thanks so much for throwing anything hard at me.
It was excellent.